Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
I'm Caye Caulker.
And thank you for joining us this morning. It is a Monday morning. Of course, we'll be checking in on our weather in just a bit. We have a lot to get into today. And we'll tell you what you can expect. It's been a bit wet this morning. I thought
overcast.
It was. Yeah, I actually thought the rain was over, and then I heard the showers coming down. So, of course, we're going to go ahead and just read the prepared forecast for this morning. So the general situation is going to be a moderate to gusty easterly airflow to prevail over the area.
The 24-hour forecast calls for cloudy at times with some brief showers and possible isolated thunderstorms over most areas today. Then a few showers and possible isolated thunderstorms will affect mainly the north and coast tonight.
All right, the winds are going to be moving from the east at 10 to 20 knots, and they're going to be gusty, which makes for a moderate to rough sea and a small craft caution for gusty winds and rough seas.
And the overall outlook is for some showers and isolated thunderstorms to continue affecting most areas on Tuesday, gradually decreasing by Tuesday night.
All right, for today, though, the high temperatures are going to be 84 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 82 degrees Fahrenheit inland, and 77 in the hills.
The lows will be 78 Fahrenheit on the coast, 72 inland, and 66 in the hills.
All right, and we want to thank forecaster Michelle Smith for putting together that forecast for us. Seems like it's going to be a rainy day, cloudy and rainy, so do be prepared. All right, we're going to get moving into our eye-opener for this morning, and our eye-opener taken from dailyom.com goes like this. We all have many aspects to ourselves. Integrating these parts into wholeness is an important step in healing. Sometimes it feels as if we may have many different people living inside of us, expressing themselves in voices that seem distinct from one another. There is the inner child with its wants and needs, the angry voice that expresses its opinion, and probably several more as well. With all these different parts of ourselves, expressing differing desires and needs and opinions, we may begin to feel as if we have no clarity. It is difficult to know which voices to pay attention to and which ones to ignore or dismiss. Even if we manage to move forward amidst the confusion, doubts, and concerns may linger in our psyches simply because they have not been fully expressed and examined. As a result, we may have trouble being at peace with the decisions we do make. As we listen, we may be amazed at the wisdom and energy stored in these fragments of ourselves. This gathering brings the fragmented pieces of our psyche into a closer relationship, enabling us to move forward as a unified whole.
So the body, the mind, and the spirit come together to form a whole, right? Within which are several aspects of your personality and your sense of self.
Yeah.
And so you have this voice. Just like how we say you have the good angel and then you have the little demon on the other shoulder, right? So you're a multifaceted individual, right? With various aspects that come together to make you complete. But when you look at what the eye opener is saying, for me more specifically, is the fact that you have to find a way in which all of these moving parts, so to speak, come together and are in sync. And that gives you that sense of self. For me, there's always this person in the back in my voice, in my mind, this voice. Okay, this is what you need to do This is how you'll go about doing it. And then there's the other person, the other voice that says, okay, is this what is most beneficial? Is this what is the most thought out and considerate approach? So you always have these two voices sort of going at each other, and then you kind of have to find the happy medium. And while that holds true for decision making, in terms of your perspective, it's the same thing too. Because a part of you may say, you know what, this is how I look at it. And another part will say, well, you know what, perhaps if I look at it from another point of view, it gives me a clearer picture. And so there's always this sense of conflict. But it's not in a negative way. It's more to arrive at something that you feel satisfied with as a whole, as a unified whole.
And that's why, it's funny when people joke about the voices in their head, like it's something strange. And we all have it. We all, whether or not we pay attention to it is a different story. I think for me, what the eye opener focuses on or reminds me is how important it is to know yourself. How important it is to understand where these voices come from. Because sometimes there's the inner drive inside of you. Sometimes it's the ego that's driving you to do certain things. Sometimes it's the doubt that's trying, and the insecurities that you have and the fears that you have that are telling you the opposite. Sometimes you're guided by the emotions that you feel, and sometimes you go off pure logic. And all of these things together at one time in making a decision or thinking something through or processing something, if you don't know where it's coming from, quite rightly, you'd be confused. And so I think for me, the eye-opener just kind of puts into focus for this morning why we need to have that better understanding. We need to listen to these voices, perhaps understand where they come from, really the thoughts that we're having, that's what it is, where it comes from, and which one you want to be guided by.
It's also part of being in tune with yourself. Right? You always have to have synchronicity, as I call it, where the mind, the body, and the soul function in on one level plane, right? So understanding yourself means you have to be able to be in tune with how you feel, the thoughts that go through your mind, and of course your actions.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for Eye Opener this morning. And if you get the sense that we are rushing through some of our housekeeping, that's because there is big news to get into for this morning. And we don't want to pretend that that's not on the forefront of all of our minds this morning. And so with that, we're going to shift gears into our Eye on the News.
All right, so it's a somber Monday morning. A lot has happened over the weekend, and I'm certain that most persons who have been following social media as of Friday are aware of what has transpired in Belize City. And so I will first begin by giving a sort of personal account before going into the coverage that we have been able to put together in respect of this incident involving Kenrick Longsworth and 3 kids, namely Z. Mark Tuyul, Mark Tuyul, and Markim Tuyul. These are the 3 children who were badly beaten and bludgeoned. In one case, Mark Tuyul Jr. has lost his life as a result of this vicious attack, allegedly at the hands of the stepfather, Kenrick Longsworth. So on Friday evening, this would have been at the point where we were leaving work at the end of the newscast or so. I got into a cab in front of the Carl Houston Memorial Hospital. And so the first thing the cab driver brought to my attention was that there was a ruckus at the back gate of the KHMH. And so when I inquired from him, okay, what was the situation? He said, okay, well, they brought in a child who at the time he presumed to have been dead. And there were 2 other children who came behind sometime thereafter. And he was saying they were badly beaten. It appeared, based on what the people were saying outside, that something had gone wrong and that the stepfather was responsible for what took place. That was my introduction to what had happened moments earlier. So that in itself also went onto social media, and it became a viral thing where people were adding and taking away from what was happening. On Saturday, a report was placed, I think it's from Crime Stoppers if I'm not mistaken, where this individual was being sought and there was a ransom for his capture, right? And the commissioner of police, in speaking with the media, pointed out that ordinarily he would have criticized the media for publishing the name of this individual based on the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, etc. But the gravity of the situation and the fact that this individual remained on the run, you have to make certain accommodations for what the media does in that particular situation. Nonetheless, I was compelled, Marlene, to go ahead and get the story off the ground in terms of understanding what actually happened. So on Sunday morning, I sat with the grandmother, I sat with the biological father, and I also spoke with residents of the Pickstock Hutment, which is jungle, right? What I'll do at the moment, however, I want us to go into the story to get a comprehensive understanding from these three individuals, and then I'll come back and give some additional points that we have not been able to touch on as yet that we're reserving for the 6:30 newscast. So we'll go into the story of what happened to these three kids on Friday. An intense manhunt for a male suspect wanted by law enforcement for his purported role in a most brutal and heart-wrenching incident involving three children ended this afternoon with the capture of Kenrick Longsworth near the Isabella Bank Road. The systematic and coordinated search led by a detail of officers began early today when they descended on this Lovely Lane address. It succeeded a 911 call from a resident of the Pickstock Hutment.
I called in the 911 center and I told them that I have information, and the information was facts, because it's not like I'm telling them lie because I want the $10,000. I don't even want the $10,000. I'm scared for my own. I'm scared to even come outside because I don't know this man's mentality or what he's going to go and do next. So I called them and I told them he was in the abandoned orange house across from jungle.
It is here, just overlooking the street from where Longsworth was last seen, that Z. Mark Tuyul Jr., and 2-year-old Markeem Tuyul were discovered on Friday evening, bloody after being badly beaten and bludgeoned, allegedly at the hands of their stepfather.
My daughter, they come in through the door, and he get one call. She come in from work. She get one call, and I just hear she make that surprise and say, Marky dead. Then I spin around, I say, no, it's not a chair there. And I spin around and I say, what you say? Marky dead? And then she tell me, yes. He say he get one news or one call that the command law supposed to kill the little boy.
3-year-old Mark was found inside the squalid home. He had been clubbed to death. His siblings were, themselves, suffering from various degrees of injuries inflicted during the deadly rampage. And Carcamo recalled receiving word of the harrowing ordeal.
Then after that, we started to get message that he beat up all three of them with one piece of stick and one hammer. Well, we rushed down to the hospital. When we rushed down there, only one me dead and the one me dead. I gone in the room, the doctor and make a scene and everything, and after that I can't tell you what happened because I dropped. And so I get up, I drop again, and so they had to pick me up and take me out of the room.
The children's biological father, Mark Tuyul Sr., is beside himself with grief. Despite no longer being with the mother of the little boys, he has tried on previous occasions to take custody of them.
I feel hurt inside, big man. And take on my John family, man. Just take for me right now. I try to hold up, but I terrified. I just pray, I just hope that they find this young man, yeah, and put him to justice. 'Cause, man, you know right the way how I see it. This man torture my baby, beat my baby to death, rape my baby. How do you think I feel inside? I just need help, I need help, I need help. I need someone to talk to me. I can't do it alone. I can't do it.
It's a feeling that is extremely difficult to describe, even for this inconsolable father. A foster parent abusing a child physically, emotionally, and sexually is unfathomable, and words can hardly explain Tuyul's anguish.
I don't have no feeling. Everything inside of me empty, empty, empty. I don't have nothing.
Where do you go from here? What happens next? Because I know this is a huge loss for you as a parent. This is perhaps the worst kind of tragedy that anyone could face. How do you pick up the pieces and move on, knowing that you've lost one of your 3 kids?
It hard, it hard, it hard, it hard. Man, the only thing I lose is my Chun Chun. You know why he killed my Chun Chun? Because he got my full details. And that's why he killed her. Because he know that he not Mark Francisco Toyol Jr. He take away my baby from me. He torture my baby before he kill her. He rape and all of that. I can't stand that. That I feel did on my head and that I take over my whole system directly. I'm crazy and I lose my whole life directly.
The grandmother continues her account of what she saw inside the trauma room at the KHMH.
The Lee boy properly beat up. There's not a space on the child that you could see when you got one hit mark, right? And then it's so sad for we that they actually tell we that the child sexually abused, right? That again gone through me that I just couldn't take it. Up to now, I still can't take it.
Explain to me the relationship that your daughter had with the stepfather, with these 3 kids' stepdad. What was that relationship like that would have perhaps led to such an incident?
Okay, I don't know really no kind of relationship, how a relationship made it go, right? But then that just where people tell me that he in an abusive home. When she come here, I tell her about it. She cut we off of Facebook, he cut we off of phone. We can't communicate no more. I never even know what part she did when this happened till when I tell we lovely Lynn. You understand? So we never had no good communication. And I could recall in a Christmas when the baby come here, he had the biggest one, had one big bite in my back. I asked him who bite her. He said Kenrick bite me in my back and he whapped me up with a piece of stick.
In February 2019, Kenrick Longsworth was committed to stand trial for the attempted murder of Kadeem Myers following a shooting incident on March 6, 2018, the night before the last municipal elections. His stepchildren, Z-Mark and Markeem Tuyul, remain hospitalized in critical condition at the Carl Huchner Memorial Hospital. Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano. So that's what we have, Mariani. It goes way beyond what I was able to capture in this first story. You're looking at a history of abuse in terms of the relationship between the stepfather, the mother, and these children. The grandmother alluded to that based on her having custody of them over the Christmas holidays and observing certain injuries on their bodies. The grandmother also mentioned to me, and I guess this is for a subsequent report, that the signs were there. It's just that
Of domestic abuse.
yeah, it's just that perhaps in this case she acted a bit too slowly in terms of being able to capture the evidence as we go along. She mentions that the child was bitten in the back, allegedly by Kenrick Longsworth, but she said she stopped short of taking a picture of it at the time. So that all of these would be perhaps evidence that goes forward in this matter. Nonetheless, as I mentioned to you, yesterday morning, I would say this would be like around 11 or sometime just before midday.
Can I
Sure,
just
go
get,
ahead.
yeah, because I'm putting the sequence into motion is so critical. The story broke Friday evening when the mother took the
Yeah.
child to the hospital and the other two. They were found in the house alone? Is that what we
Presumably.
know so
yes,
far?
presumably.
So he was not in the house at that
No.
time. So that's when the manhunt started for him.
That's
from
when-
Friday night.
I would want to think so, yes.
Okay.
Because that's when it came to light that something had happened.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've seen one of the pictures that's been floating around. It's rather graphic, but they have a picture of the child
No,
with,
no, I don't
with an
watch.
injury,
Yeah.
a gash to the head. So I believe
And
that's
we should
what
not
the
be
mother...
sharing those photos. That's also the
Yeah.
other thing.
I believe that's what the mother encountered when she got there, right? And so I could imagine that that's a most frightening situation to happen upon.
Yeah.
And so that's what sort of triggered everything in motion thereafter.
So on Saturday, that's when, early Saturday, we knew that the manhunt was on.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we weren't told the name, we were only given a photo. And it followed through to yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were following this the entire weekend, I know that much.
Yeah. And so yesterday, sometime between 11 o'clock and midday, a team of officers descended on Lovely Lane. If you're familiar with the geography of the area, you're looking at the Pickstock Hutment on one side, which
Yeah.
we call jungle. And on the other side is where the incident took place.
Yeah.
Right? And so the officers swept the area in search of the suspect.
Yeah.
Come to find out that, according to the residents who were there, particularly the individual who placed the 911 call in the first instance, she says on record that she called because she saw the individual. And so
She saw Longsworth.
Yeah, and so she placed a call immediately. And they are on record also, this individual and perhaps several others, saying that while the officers were in the area combing in search of Mr. Longsworth, that he was in fact there and that he had eluded capture at that point.
Yeah.
Now, how he got from Lovely Lane
Yeah.
to Isabella Bank Road is another story in and of itself.
Yeah.
I would want to assume, and this is only me making an assumption,
Yeah.
that he may have been aided and abetted if that were the case, right? Or perhaps unbeknownst to some individual who doesn't know what was happening, probably hitched a ride with them and he ended up there. That's speculation. But I'm just saying, he got from the area of Pickstock Hutment all the way to Isabella Bank, right? That is under question and
The police
review.
information that he was in fact hiding in the area we call jungle was factual. He was there for a period of time.
That's what the residents are saying.
Okay.
And because of the fact that the officers swept in on the area, the entire community was alive yesterday. People were out in abundance, so to speak. And they were all speaking the same language to say that, you know what, the man was here, they set chase after him, they couldn't catch him, and that's how it transpired thereafter. These are persons on record saying that. Again, I'm saying that part of it is under question because the department, from what another media source has put out there, is saying that this was all, smoke and mirror while they were effecting another operation in the Isabella Bank area. I don't know how true that is. I won't call that into question until I'm able to prove otherwise. But those are the two
But we've
streams of
gotten
thought.
those reports from the police.
Yeah, well, not from the police. That's what
Oh.
I'm saying. Another media house has
Okay.
reported that that is the timeline. And I'm saying, there are two streams of thought where that is concerned. But not to take away from the issue at hand, which is the fact that, Marlene, I have covered a similar situation. I recall back in March 2018, the case of baby Alyssa Nunes in Mascal, where the stepfather, Everal Martinez, who is now on remand and will stand trial for murder, similar scenario, where the child was sexually abused and assaulted, and beaten over the head with some blunt object, bludgeoned to death, right? And so it harkens back to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of a social issue that must be addressed. But I won't go that far because I know that a huge part of today's program will be dedicated to that. But it's just, I don't know, I sit here as a parent and I'm troubled, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Just the mere thought of it and seeing the reaction of persons close to these kids, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a very tough one.
Well, you know, I think Isani, what you feel, and by extension, what we all feel, is it's a pain, it's a helplessness, it's a powerlessness, it's a frustration. There's so many different emotions right now, I think, that any person who's heard the story feels, because no child should suffer like that. No child. And it's so troubling to imagine three, and you're talking young children, 3 young children having to suffer that ordeal. And the challenge is that when we have emotions like this, we start blaming, and we look for people to blame. And I think that's going to be a part of how we react to this. I just hope that the next step that comes after that is the realization that we do have a role to play. Without putting any blame, it's recognizing cycles of abuse from domestic and how domestic can lead to child abuse. Reporting, even if it's going to upset everyone in your family, even if it severs the relationship with the abused person, reporting, because that can potentially save their life. They may never talk to you again, but at least they'd be alive. And if you love someone, you want that for them. You know, it's even, I've had an issue, me personally, with even calling him a stepfather. He can't be a stepfather. I asked you if they were married. They're not married. Even if they're living together, it's only a common law union after 7 years. So it's just a partner. It's just a boyfriend. Whether visiting or living, live-in, it's just a boyfriend. And I think that's a very different. There are lots of stepfathers out there right now who perhaps feel judged as well. And I just want to say, you know, he's not a stepfather. A stepfather is a completely different thing from someone. Had they been living together for so long, then it would be a common law union. Had they been married, it would be a partnership. But it's a boyfriend. And so that's one of the things that I think in terms of messaging we have to be clear about as well. There's so many different layers to this, and so many different social issues that seem to be coming into play. I cannot begin to imagine what the mother is feeling since seeing her children in that state, since losing her child. And I have the greatest pain inside trying to imagine what she must feel, and of course by extension the rest of the family. That interview with the father had to be tough for you as a father as well.
I mean, it's an emotionally charged situation. It took me a while to kind of get down from that high, so to speak, yesterday.
The anger.
And I'll depart off professional for now. As a parent, Marlene, we're charged with protecting the innocence of our children, right? That's your primary mandate, right? To make sure that your child enjoys his or her childhood. And so, as a parent, that's all you have to ensure that that child grows up understanding what innocence is until he or she is prepared or willing to let go of that in a coming of age experience. And to see someone take that away from a child by force. Someone who's supposed to provide the care and the attention that the child needs. In any situation, it doesn't matter to me if it's in a foster situation or if it's in a nuclear situation where you have both biological parents. In any situation, you as a parent are supposed to provide that love, that safety, everything for that child. And when you take that away, you have damaged the child permanently. So that for these other two kids who are growing up, that's a stain that will remain with them forever based on what they have experienced, you know. And so when I did this and I appreciated the gravity of what the situation is, it hurts. It has to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing about it is that I stood there with the young men who were at the residence yesterday, and the anger is palpable. You could feel it. Like if they, for whatever reason, would have gotten to him first, it would have been a different outcome. And I think that is the tension and the anger that many Belizeans felt when they were made aware of what transpired.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult. It's a tough one.
I think the anger is shared throughout, and that actually led me to, when we saw the video of him being taken into the police station, one of the things I was mindful of was to see if he looked injured, because what I feel could very easily take place is everyone is angry. The people are, even the police, the way the police attacked to be able to attack this issue, this manhunt, to find him, you can tell that everyone is very emotionally charged. This man has to go through trial. He needs to face the full consequence of the law and any missteps made along the way. And I think this is the plea, and this is what we must all demand, is that it is done by the book. The last thing we want, whenever it comes to trial, a year, 2 years from now, is to have some defense attorney get in there and talk about some of the smallest little missteps made, the slightest evidence of abuse, the slightest discrepancies in confessions or investigations. We have to, because this anger has to be put into something, and it's not going to be vigilante justice. And it shouldn't be, because you can't say it works for one, it doesn't work for the other. So I think that's one of the things that we have to pay attention to. When we have all these emotions, it has to be channeled into something, and I'm really hoping that it can be channeled into ensuring that he faces the consequences, and also that we are far more vigilant of our children and vulnerable people in society, because we have to be.
This is an individual whom, by the way, has a lengthy rap sheet. When I pull up his record, at least from our news archives, he has been charged for a raft of different offenses in the past. So I don't know where they go from here in terms of, they have their suspect, they have to go through the entire process now, and let's see where it goes from there.
And the status of the other two boys?
One child remains in critical condition. The grandmother was saying to me yesterday that he is sort of in and out of consciousness. And it seems as if though he is replaying, perhaps that's not the proper word, like he's reliving the whole thing, right? There's a lot that was shared in the interviews yesterday that we'll still be focusing on today. So this is just one aspect of it. I know the police will weigh in, and there are a lot of angles to go with this thing. The Department of Human Services, I believe, has to be able to weigh in on this. The NCFC, Special Envoy. And I'm urging them to respond in a timely manner. I think people want information that is timely on how this will be dealt with. I think that is, we are owed as Belizeans, I think we're owed that much from these organizations. I'll leave that there, Marlene. There's another quick thing that I want to touch on that is equally as important. This morning, today, is the ceremonial opening of the legal year 2020. And on Friday, we had mentioned in our newscast that the Bar Association has opted to sit out the attendance of its membership from this particular event. Now, I've been covering openings for many years, and the bar president's speech or address is one of the hallmarks in the entire thing. It's a lot of pomp and circumstance with the CJ doing the inspection and what have you. And then inside the chamber, there's the presentation from the CJ himself, the Attorney General, and the bar president. And so the president, because of the issue that has to do with the challenge involving the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, they have taken a unified stand to say, well, we will not attend today's event. And so I assume it will be anemic in terms of its turnout, because ordinarily when you look at the procession, there are dozens of lawyers who walk down Regent Street. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out, and what will the addresses be from the Attorney General and the Chief Justice himself in respect of that matter.
And to see how many of the Bar Association members actually do sit it out. Because they're saying right now it's the executive that definitely won't, and the members have a choice, right?
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's like if you're a part of a union, for instance, where you know, the executive feels as if though they're being mistreated, or the position that they have taken for whatever reason based on a unified front, you would stand behind that. So
well, I mean, that's an interesting point. That's what I'm saying, because if unions call for a protest and the numbers, we always look at the numbers aren't big enough, we say, oh, the association doesn't support you. So I think that will be a presumption that people will make today, depending on the turnout as well. And of course, the critical conversation there beyond the opening is also what will happen with the judges that should leave, vacate their seat this
A total
year.
of 5 are expected to demit office over the course of the year. So all of those will also be covered this evening at 6:30.
All right, and that's it for us with the Eye on the News. All right, and as we said, we did have a lot to get into for the coverage of the tragedy that took place on Friday. And as Ms. Annie mentioned, you'll be able to get more from that in our newscast tonight, or extensive coverage, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and quickly, we have our morning tea, which we try to spark up conversations, and it's keeping in theme with the issue that has taken place. Yeah.
It's asking how much access should step parents have to their children, or to the children of their other half. I've been trying to ponder that, but I don't know if I want to respond. I don't know.
It's a difficult time to talk about it, because I think all that's on our mind is the issue. And that's why I said, when I read it this morning, for me, I think it's because we're loosely using the term stepdad. And I think that the idea of parenthood, parenting in general, is a lot more serious than if I'm dating someone, that doesn't make them the father of my children. That doesn't make them the stand-in parent of my children. That's just my partner. And I think that there has to be a very clear distinction made for that, because there's a difference between someone loving you and someone loving your children. And I've never been in that situation, so I don't know how people set their boundaries for that. But clearly, you would want to imagine that your children and the protection of your children come first, as most parents tend to think, and secondary comes your personal life as well. So I stand by what I said before. A stepfather, you know, you've married, you're living together, there's a commitment there rather than just dating or seeing someone short term.
I'll choose not to comment on that.
Okay, well, we got to get moving into our show for today. And so, keeping in the theme, we understand that there's a lot to process from the crime that has taken place, but we want to turn it into something that will be more helpful in terms of how society can help to prevent things like what we saw on Friday, and that's in identifying the signs of abuse. So we're going to go ahead and have that conversation, how we can see what we can do, what we're legally mandated to do as well, in preventing child abuse. And so that's going to be our first conversation.
Our second conversation is revisiting what has happened in Caye Caulker a couple days ago, where there was an absence of light and water. And so the Caye Caulker BTIA chapter will be here with us to discuss what has happened since and the gravity of the damages that they had to incur as a result of these shortages.
And then we're going to close off with a conversation with the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. They have quite a number of professional development courses, and so we're going to get the full calendar on that in the final part of our show. But we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll get started, but we got our birthday shout out.
We are saying happy birthday to Edison Palacios Sr. Happy birthday.
All right, we'll take that break now and we'll be back in a few. Stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service excellence in Belize, the Belize Bank Limited recognizes the importance
back. And of course, we are starting our first conversation for this morning. We are joined by professional counselor Amy Jex. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
And Amy, we thank you for being here this morning as we try to collectively regroup and put things into perspective following the tragedy that occurred at the end of last week. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Like you said, it's a very important topic and it really touches all of us. It really brings up a lot of things, and as I've mentioned before, a topic like this, it's important to keep it in the zeitgeist. It's important to keep talking about it, because by talking about it, we challenge those norms that we don't want. We can be able to change and to spot the differences and to say, you know, this isn't right. Let's try to move in this direction.
Yeah. You know, I think the overarching issue right now is looking at what was done to this particular child, but to broaden it, it's being able to understand that there are many children in this country who suffer from child abuse. But you know, tapping into your own profession, would you say that the entire country and people who've been exposed to this story, that we have all on some level experienced the trauma of this incident?
These issues do traumatize us as a society, as a group. As I believe you mentioned slightly, but there are people who are calling out for vigilante justice because they feel that it's what they can do. And that's what it's calling us to do. It's asking us to say, we need to react, we need to do something. And in our reaction, it kind of becomes ingrained that we need to do something personally. So we can't just leave it to other people or step back. But in that's what I'm saying. We need to start making wider changes in our entire society.
Yeah.
So yes, there is that individual trauma that comes to us because of these types of things.
Yeah.
We are in a society where at this point we have not experienced war, but we do have that violence, the gang violence. We have the unreliability of certain things. We do live with certain things in our society that cause us to change how we think, and we come to accept certain things that maybe we should not. So in something like this, we say and we talk to ourselves, where is my responsibility? We start talking about these things that are affecting us, and they change how we interact with each other. Could you imagine that? As the grandmother in your news piece mentioned, she saw things but did not speak out. So that is something that she is living with, and it's something that she's been talking about, you know. And so these are the things where we do live with certain signs and certain things that we feel that we should not, but we don't have an outlet for it.
We were discussing just a bit, and one of the things that we want to that you said you wanted to discuss was looking at the cultural norms that's kind of developed in the country. And a lot of it has to do with abuse. In fact, in 16 Days of Activism, we always hear kind of naysayers coming out and, criticizing the fact that not enough is done, but not really realizing that this isn't a them and us construct. It really is everybody. So
Yes.
can we move into that?
Yes, I believe the last time I was on Open Your Eyes was for the launch of the 16 Days of Activism. And, you know, it is a really important conversation that was started. And in these cases, it's unfortunate, but this is a continuation of that conversation. When we talk about violence in our community, in our society, these are exactly the things we are talking about. As you had mentioned in the news piece as well, there were already signs of that abuse within the relationship.
Yeah.
And that is one of the main indicators that we see would carry on into the abuse of the children. So if you are in a relationship that is not balanced, you don't have equality, where there is a power issue, where there is a control issue, that's one of the main things that will trigger these kinds of incidents where the children might get abused.
Yeah.
Because in that, you have an expectation that as maybe the perpetrator, you have an expectation of everything being done toward what you want.
Yeah.
So if things don't go to where you want it to be, then you have a loss of control, right? So when we have these conversations, it's important to note that you have to learn to emotionally regulate, and that's something that in our culture, in our society, we do not have a priority on that. When you have a child who has a tantrum, you spank the child and you inflict even more violence upon the child. So the child learns that when there is something I don't like, violence comes of it. So I don't learn to express myself. I don't learn to regulate my emotions. I just learn that I will be beat until I'm quiet. So when I learn to want to get someone else to enter to not do what I don't want, I will just beat it out of them. You know, so that is one of the basic things that we look about. We have a culture of violence. We just have violence in all levels. We scream at our employees, we scream at our students, we scream at our children, and we expect something different to come from that. But if that's the only thing we see, that's what will happen. That's what I will do, because that's what I will see. We have loud households, we have households where there is beating, we have these things, and it's not that they are bad parenting versus good parenting. It's when you look at it, am I getting the opportunity to rationalize and have an opinion as to why I should stop this behavior? Or do I just shut up because I don't have a chance? Again, this is where we have this power. So at the first opportunity that I can get power, so I am 10, 11 years old, and I have been beaten my entire life. But when I get that growth spurt at 13, then I get stronger than you, and you can't beat me, so I start hitting you. Because that's what we do in our home. We hit each other, we scream at each other, and the bigger person will be the one who can inflict a bit more.
Let me ask this, and perhaps I'm digressing a bit here. I want to go back to the question that was posed in the morning tea. How much access does, I want to be politically correct by Marlene's standards, so you'll forgive the question. How much access does an individual in a relationship situation, who may not necessarily be the biological parent of the child or children, should have? In your opinion, or perhaps from a professional point of view, how do you measure how close or how distant, or do you discipline, or do you leave that for someone else to deal with? How does that dynamic work?
Well, that is a tricky situation because it depends on the relationship, right? But when we look at the signs, some of the things that I was preparing was when the one thing you mentioned earlier was when the relationship starts getting intense too quickly, that is a bad sign for the relationship. So if you don't allow yourself to get to know your partner before introducing your partner to your children, that's not a good thing. So you have to be confident in how well you know your partner before you can introduce your partner to your children. Let's say, for example, that you started this relationship and maybe it evolved a little bit more quickly, but you have gotten to interact with your partner, and you know that your partner is also a parent, and you know from other people that your partner is a good parent. Maybe you have less trouble introducing your children to that person. But in that, again, we go back to equality. Your partner will not overstep bounds either. You will have conversations. We see that with stepfathers, we see that with stepmothers as well. If you have that mutual respect with your partner, you will understand, you know what, your child said something inappropriate, how do we deal with this? And we have a conversation about it, rather than why you lash my picnic. You know, it's not starting there. So it has to do a lot more going back to the nature of the relationship, how quickly it's evolving, and the level of respect within that relationship. So it's not a, we can go after a month, you can come into my children's lives and discipline them, or we've been married for 15 years and you cannot discipline my child. So it really depends on the relationship and how well the communication is within that relationship, and also the level of respect within it.
Because this is actually one of the fundamentals in child abuse prevention, which is knowing who your children are exposed to. And so if I'm dating someone and I know them 4 or 5 months, how much do I really know them enough to expose my children to them? And so I want, that's a great way to kind of talk about how you can prevent child abuse from your own children, because so often abuse happens, physical and sexual, by people who are close to the kids.
You know, majority, up to 90% of all abuse, physical and sexual, is perpetrated by someone who the child knows and interacts with on a regular basis. So when we talk about who has access to your child, as a parent, it's not just the partner that you're concerned with, but who's your babysitter, who are the teachers at the school. And so as a parent, you need to know the people who are around your children. You need to know that these people are people who will talk to you and say, you know, your child is not doing this, or your child is doing this behavior. Because we look at children as, well, we're evolving. We have some of us who see children as thinking individuals, and they will learn and we will speak to them, but we still have those ideas that children are still to be seen and not heard. We do have those people in our society still who believe that a child should not have an opinion, should not speak. But the earlier you start having children share and learn things, the easier it is for them to advocate for themselves. When we talk about abuse, we often talk about vulnerable populations. So when we talk about child abuse, we see children as vulnerable populations. So when we talk about children, we're going to have them empower themselves. We need to teach them what is appropriate. And that's where parenting comes in. That's where we need to teach the children themselves. You have to respect this about yourself. If someone does this to you, you have to come back with this. We have to have that conversation where we're talking not just about friendships, but about sexuality at earlier ages, so children can know what is right and what is not right. So if I'm a parent and I don't have time, or I don't make the time for these conversations, at what point will I find out if my child is being groomed for something? Because that's what we call it. Sometimes there are abusers and perpetrators who groom children. And that would say, you know, adults who spend time with children in inappropriate manners. Maybe they give gifts for no reason. Maybe they talk to the children about their personal problems. It's like they are talking to children as if the child was an adult. So when we look at those grooming behaviors, we're seeing things that are inappropriate, but they're not really weird. It's just, oh, this person is spending some nice time with the children. When we think about this, we wonder, who do I look out for in this situation? Sometimes it's someone who is a positive person in our lives. It's someone who is charismatic, but we have to start looking at, is this behavior appropriate? Is this at a level where it would be okay for this child to be this close to that person at this point? So again, looking back at time, how quickly this is happening.
I think there's an onus on parents particularly to be vigilant because the child may not know that he or she is being exposed to the dangers of someone who has a motive or an agenda.
Of course.
The child is innocent to that. So the child doesn't know how to detect when someone is doing something because there's a motion, they're trying to get to something. But the parent should have that responsibility or that innate sense to detect, you know what, you can't get that close, or you know, high and by is enough. Or you know what, that's your grandmother, your grandfather, that is
Or
a bit
even,
more
you
okay or
know,
what have
even,
you.
you know, when the child says, you know, I don't want to go hail uncle, and the
Mm-hmm.
parent says, you know, you have to.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are these expectations that we are willing to look past because this is supposed to be what it is. But we really have to listen to what the child says
Yeah.
and make sure the child is being comfortable. So when the child comes and says, I don't want to spend time with this person, you have to sit down and ask why, instead of saying, but that's the babysitter, you have to.
Yeah.
You know? So, but the child will never come and tell you, I don't feel comfortable around this person, if you don't make the child comfortable enough to
you.
come to
Telling
you.
you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So you are right, Tisani, in saying that the onus is on the parents, on the grandparents, on the aunts, on the uncles, on the extended family. We all have to look out. Like I mentioned, children are a vulnerable population, similar to the elderly, similar to people with disabilities. And so we have to look at these populations differently. The reason why we have the 16 days of activism is because of the power shifts in the community. Men are a more elevated level than women. So to an extent, women are also a vulnerable population. That is why we have those 16 days to empower women to say, you know, you can speak out as well. You can have a little bit more. You have a right to speak out. These are the things that you can do. And give women and give other people that opportunity to say, these are appropriate, these are inappropriate, and speak out when you feel that something is off. And it's not calling 911 or blaming someone. It's learning to understand what feels right and knowing that if your gut feeling is off, what to do about it. Because sometimes we just have that gut feeling and we don't really know what our next step is, but we don't want to get the police involved. We don't want to get the social workers involved because that will take it to another level that maybe I might not be prepared to do at that point. But it is important to be able to say, let me talk to my cousin who knows a lawyer. Let me talk to this person who knows the police. And just have that conversation so that we start learning a bit more.
Yeah. You know, I think that one of the things, and you said, naturally when you see signs, or sometimes you even hear physical abuse taking place, domestic and to partners and to children, and you don't do anything because we feel like we don't want to get involved. But especially in the case of children, there is a mandatory reporting law where if you have reasonable proof to believe that a child is being abused, you should report it. And this is because, as you said so clearly, children are vulnerable and very often incapable of speaking up or defending their own selves. And when the household that they're in no longer ensures that protection, we as neighbors, as people who pass through the community, as people who witness certain things, we have a responsibility to report it as well. And in fact, there are structures in place and laws in place to remind us of that responsibility. So using that as kind of a jumping point, what can I look for? I mean, maybe I just see a adult and a child and it doesn't really look okay to me, but that's not enough to say something is happening. If I come in contact with a child, what are some of the things that I may look for to understand or to recognize that they may be a victim of abuse?
Well, as you know, there are the different signs of abuse. So with physical abuse, it's a lot more easy to recognize. Maybe welts on the skin, you have maybe injuries, broken bones, you may the child may show maybe limping, but that's a first conversation to ask what happened. And if the child has been groomed to say, you know, I fell off the step, or, you know, I am just a clumsy child and I fell, then we already know there that it's going to be difficult to get help for this particular child because this child has been groomed to say, nothing is wrong, I'm all right, it's just something that happened naturally or something. And so the child already is starting to cover up for the abuser in just the physical. When we talk about more sexual abuse, as a therapist, you always look for inappropriate sexual development or sexual signs when it's for a younger age. So someone who speaks about sexual things when it's not appropriate for their age. That's one of the biggest things. So we might look for physical signs of rape, but as a therapist, that's not what I'm specialized. As a teacher, you can do that. As a parent, yes. If you are a medical provider, then the parent would take that person to you and you could see those signs of sexual abuse. But as a neighbor, you want to see more of inappropriate behaviors, sexual things that children at that age should not know, but they do know. Being extra violent could be something else. One of the things I mentioned about a perpetrator could be true to the child as well. Emotional dysregulation, not being able to know how to process feelings or explain feelings, and always being extra aggressive or extra angry. So those are one of the things. When we look at an abuser, very often there is a history of abuse in that abuser's history. So we can't, like you mentioned, there has to be that legal process to this, because we cannot do vigilante justice, because every time I see a case on the news, something that comes up in social media, my first thought as a counselor is, I wonder what is the history of that person. I wonder when that person was abused. I wonder what the background of that person was, that these are the things that are happening to this person. So in many instances, these people who are perpetrators were victims at some point. And that's how they learned the cycle of abusing. That's how they learned the cycle of this is how you express yourself. So that there is that emotional dysregulation. So we talked about sexual, we talked a little bit about physical abuse, but in emotional abuse, you see a lot of stunted emotions. But if we look at our culture, who really, has perfect communication, especially at a young age. So these are things that we definitely need to look at, how you express yourself and different things like that.
I wanted to move beyond just the child abuse, because I think when you mentioned earlier, and I don't want us to move past it, because there are women right now who are watching, who are worrying about their children, but just how common it is that often, if you are the victim in a domestic abuse case, if you are being abused in your home, how likely it is that your children may be at risk as well. Because we know of stories where women stay in the relationship because the threat is, I'm going to hurt your children. But essentially the fact that you're abused is already a threat to your children, right?
Yes, and you hear that even in marriages. I stay in this relationship because of my children. But we mentioned earlier that we have this community trauma from these types of incidents, right? So imagine if you are being abused domestically. Your children witness that. So they are experiencing trauma from the domestic abuse. Even if the children are not being abused physically or sexually, that is an emotional drain on the children as well, that they are experiencing that you are being hit, that you are expressing yourself like this. So when we see some of these signs, we see that children often learn to scream at their parents because that's the communication that they hear in the home. They learn to curse because that's the communication they hear in their home. So we have all these signs that go back to, if you are in an abusive relationship, your children are seeing it, but statistics show that when the partner is being abused, there is a high likelihood that the children are also being abused physically. Perhaps not sexually, that is a little bit different. So sexual abuse is a little bit different. If the mother is being raped or if the partner is being raped, there's not necessarily that sexual abuse toward the children, except in some cases. Again, goes back with the perpetrator. There is a history of abuse. There might have been a history of sexual abuse for that person as well. There might be some substance use. We are looking for maybe other mental health issues where emotional dysregulation might be one of the major indicators of that mental health illness. There might be stress, and we look at parenting as a big issue as well.
You're saying something I think that even goes beyond what I was thinking when I asked the question. So I was thinking that if I'm in a house and my spouse beats me, that someday he may beat my children, and I'm staying because I don't want him to hurt my children, but staying puts them more at risk. But you're highlighting the fact that just them seeing it, or oftentimes hearing it, because people try to hide it, is enough trauma to them.
Of course. And yes, if you grew up, let's say your neighbors were very loud, that affected you. Imagine if it was inside your home, you know. And one of the things you mentioned earlier is that as neighbors, we have an obligation to reach out. But I've heard from many people, I have these neighbors and I call the police to their house several times. And you know what? I called so much that I stopped calling because the police stopped come. You know,
everybody gets tired of dealing with the situation, and there's no change.
But that's a lack of sensitization, because that's why we call it the cycle of domestic abuse.
Exactly, and by having these things, we set up safety plans. We set up options for these people so that they don't feel that obligation to go back. Remember, when we talk about domestic abuse, there is that economic aspect of emotional abuse. Sorry, the economic.
Where are you gonna go if you leave?
Exactly. And sometimes you would like to go back to your mom's house, but there's already your two siblings and all their kids living there. And so there is not that space to go, and you are making a little bit of money, you're maintaining your household, and you cannot afford a rent. As I talk to a lot of people. Go ahead.
There's sort of like a one-way policy where when you come of age and you venture off into a relationship, if you're living with somebody already, if something happens, you can't come back. You have to stay and battle it out, or you have to fend for yourself otherwise. For some reason, you find that that's prevalent.
It's a very real situation, And so, you know, I said that, and I think that maybe that's one of the ways we can channel the emotions we're feeling right now. Look out to see how we're supporting victims of domestic abuse in the households. Are we reporting? Maybe that one time you didn't call the police, tired of calling, is the day something tragic happens. And also that we need to have more support systems in place, because if you don't have anywhere to go, if you can't go back to mom's, because you know mom's gonna say, listen, you choose that, you stay there, or I can't take you in, or maybe you're embarrassed. That you do have somewhere else to go as well, and not stay and risk your life or the lives of your children. So this is a part of our processing this morning. We're out of time. Amy, I know you have a lot more to get into, but that just means that we will keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for the chat. It was very important to me too.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we will get an update from the Caye Caulker Belize Tourism Industry Association about the troubles they've been having with utilities on the island. So please stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service excellence in Belize, the Belize
And welcome back. We are beginning our second segment this morning. We have with us on set representatives of the Caye Caulker Belize Tourism Industry Association. We have Chapter President Maria Vega. Good morning.
Good.
We also have Buddy Magania Jr., who's the secretary. Good morning. And the treasurer, Akil Badio. Good morning, folks. Begin by giving us an update as to where we are at present insofar as the utilities on the island.
Okay, well, to begin with, we want to say a big thank you to everybody that supported Caye Caulker, all of you that were with us through the troubled times, and especially those who came out for any of our press conferences or peaceful protests and like that, and of course the whole nation and the security forces for being so gracious about all the events. At this time, we are patched in for power and water. Yes, it is a prayer and a promise that we are on. Some more, as they say, used equipment from in-country has been borrowed and put to Caye Caulker that has brought up the power and water supply so that we are operating.
Have you had uninterrupted service since it was restored?
No, we've had low pressure and we've also had a blackout again or some brownouts. But I imagine we're getting some investments that have been promised. Everybody is saying for the service suppliers, not the utility suppliers, that they will be stepping up their game on Caye Caulker, trying to meet the load for the growth of the village.
It couldn't have been a worse time for both utilities to have failed on the island at what is considered one of the peak seasons.
Yes.
One of the things that came to light from I think the first consultation was people were just starting to tally up the impact of losses from the extended time without water or without electricity. Where are you in terms of being able to put together those numbers from your members?
Well, consider that we have different levels of losses. We have for households, we have from the employees, we have from the business owners.
Yeah.
And so we encourage everybody to make their claims. The utility companies have put customer service person on the ground to work one-on-one with persons. And we are sharing the claim forms and like that, but it's a set procedure that you have to go through. And if we say like, if we have 500 households, let's say, just look at domestic, if we have 500 households and somebody lost a $300 TV and a $200 microwave, then you just multiply, right? So you already have like in the $250,000 losses just for one small thing. And if you think that people had other more sensitive equipment, which is the reports that we are getting also, because you have a lot of office equipment and other equipment. But it's an ongoing process, and we encourage each and every community member to process their claims. We know that some of the other associations have been running tallies by internet and Facebook and things like that with the business community at large, and I know that those are in multi-million
This is my curiosity.
losses.
Multi-million dollar?
Which is my curiosity, right? In following this whole thing and covering it, I am aware that Belize Electricity Limited has made available the claims for you guys to be able to assess your damage and be able to submit for it. But it doesn't speak to any losses based on cancellations for those who are in the tourism industry, right? So if you have a damaged appliance, for instance, you could fill out the form and say, okay, I lost a refrigerator or a microwave or a flat screen TV, etc. And so they will look at that, make an assessment, and then you're probably eligible to receive some compensation. But if you're a hotel, you had 50 guests who are booked for that week, and then all of this happens, and those people pull back. That's potential loss of revenue that you can't recover because that is not made available in the claims process. How are you guys absorbing that?
Well, I would say put that in your claims process too if you have proof, because if you have proof of proof and you can show your paper trail of your losses, then you need to support any claim. So I wouldn't say that it's an automatic now. I would encourage people
You're
to
still
make
encouraging
the claim
people
also.
to put that,
On individual level, then there's always a recourse to claim for losses as a civil suit or something like that.
Which was my other point.
So that would then be an individual thing unless people wanted to organize for
wouldn't
that.
it be, in your opinion, more powerful a statement to make and perhaps more effective if a class action suit was taken? So for instance, if you have 30 or 50 businesses want to come together and there are claimants on one application that says we're suing BEL or BWS or whomsoever.
The option is not off the table. Okay?
Yeah.
The option is not off the table, but going forward, we have to say that there are many other options that people can take too. You know, you can go that route or invest more and become more self-reliant. Yeah. And then you are better protected if this happens again.
Yeah.
There's, for example, today the Ministry of Tourism and tomorrow they're holding sessions directly with hoteliers for renewable energies and making plans for that now so that individually people can prepare better. It would also be good in terms of one of the costs that we tend to ignore some of the time, and that's the cost of the environment of holding on to very inefficient or polluting sources of energy. And so if you would see sometimes the thickness of that smoke coming off of the generators, you'd be horrified. And so there hasn't been an investment of, let's say, even filters, even one-step filtering of the exhaust coming off. And that's a terrific cost to the environment and to people's health. So then if we can use this as a wake-up call for everybody, because, you know, if the utilities were not doing the best job and we were accepting it, then there's, you know, we need to ask for better and speak loudly for better.
I hear what you're saying. It's like a wake-up call for everyone. For the utilities that seem to have dropped the ball on Caye Caulker, but also the businesses itself that kind of have to look towards being more self-reliant, given the challenges in being able to secure the services in Caye Caulker. I have one question before that, though, because I think what has been unspoken is the PR nightmare that was avoided for 5 days, and I don't know how that was possible. You know, we hear stories of people who are canceling, people who demanded refund, but I think it also goes to show that there is some exceptional customer service available in Caye Caulker, that people weren't on Twitter blowing up about how terrible Belize or Caye Caulker is, or disaster vacations, or talk to us about how you were able to keep the image of the island protected.
Well, having known that Caye Caulker BTA have been in existence for over 30 years, in our chapter specifically, we have our course coordinator here that we deliver different courses to for such occasion that people would know, front desk workers would know exactly how to go about dealing with a situation whenever one arises. So for something like this, I myself took the initiative while going to work and people voicing their concern, having guests who are friends of mine being upset about the fact that they don't have water or electricity. I could recall there was this specific Airbnb that they were staying at that they said they were proud to say they stayed there because there was a backup source where there's a well and water tank. So they didn't really worry much about the fact that they lost the electricity, but they also explained that this will be a hold up until whatever the problem is could be resolved. So back to what Miss Maria said, the very old days of Caye Caulker, I could recall my grandfather had a pump, a well, and also a water tank. And these were the things that had helped them and myself get throughout the process of maybe growing up. I cannot recall anybody was ever getting sick from using any of the natural resources. and having known that the change had made with the Belize Water Services Limited, and it was enforced that you must be on the Belize Water Services Limited water supply, I think it's not a bad idea, but I also believe that all hotel owners, all stakeholders on the island, whether they're a part of Belize Tourism Industry Association for Caye Caulker or they're running independently without having any association backup, they should have a plan.
Here's the thing, and this was my observation on the island when I was there. I find it difficult to understand or believe that an investor would pump in, for argument's sake, $1 million in a resort or a business and not have certain basic things in place, like reserve water or an alternate energy source, power source. Like, how do you not? That should be part of the business plan or the module from the beginning. And you attend this meeting where people are complaining loudly that, you know what, I'm affected, my guests are affected, I've lost so much. And you look at the scope of their investment and you say, but how do you put in $1 million and never had that in the back of your mind that you ought to protect that investment by having these things in place? Isn't that something that you guys have found on the island as well?
Exactly so, and I would say more than likely, all of them, I would say to an extent, would be highly confident of the services, not knowing that the island is being in that rapid growth process. Maybe the water supply and the electricity supply hasn't been in a plan, a strategic plan whereby they could have proceed with the growth, because Caye Caulker hasn't been moving according to that slogan, of which is popular to many people, go slow. It's been growing
at a rapid pace. Yeah.
But we just want to make sure that it keeps as natural as it is, knowing as we...
This is part of the problem though, and again, you'll forgive me, I'm an outsider. I just appreciated everything when I went to the island, not on vacation, but to actually get a grasp of what's taking place, right? So, as with most of what has happened in the country, there hasn't been a development plan where you provide utilities to match the demand in growth and what have you. So you find that you have businesses going up in residential areas, you have all of this thing that is not properly planned out, and then you're expecting the utilities to be able to provide the same amount of output when there's nothing set in place that says, okay, this is residential, this is commercial, this is communal space, or what have you. How do you address that problem? Because now Caye Caulker has boomed considerably from the time when we used to go there at 15 years old to spend Easter.
It's not supposed to be as ad hoc and out of control as or haphazard, may we say, as is appearing. I can tell you that we've sat at planning tables with all authorities and agencies. We have our first plan with the coastal zone for a Caye Caulker vision from 2001. We've had, as the BTIA, lobbied for analysis of the needs for water and sewer since 2011. We've, lobbied to get in-depth studies funded so that the government would have guidance and the decision makers would have guidance on the best way forward. So we have been at the table where we've said lot sizes should not be so small, because it's for people's health, right? You need so much space, you need open space. The more urbanization you have, the more open and green space you need for mental health and other health, And so we've been at these planning tables, but somewhere in the decision making at some other level, things get ignored or shelved or very much delayed. For example, the submarine cable that may have been a cleaner energy was from 2008. So look where we are. But so things are just take that long or are ignored, and people override whoever is in decision making capacity.
That would have been my question, because I hold a differing opinion from Isani, in that the tourism ministry has the numbers. We get the numbers every year for how many people come into the country, where they're going. They monitor water taxes, they monitor flights. They have the hotel association numbers, they have the Airbnb statistics. So we know that Caye Caulker is one of the sought-after destinations, and for quite a while as well. But it seems that for some reason there hasn't been as much of a focus. Now, to be fair, it was only till recent that San Pedro got their water issue dealt with, where every Easter and sometimes peak season, they'd have the water trickling out of their pipes. But why is it that you feel, or how do you use this opportunity to ensure that when a discussion takes place about development of destinations, that Caye Caulker is put as one of the priorities, as one of the booming destinations?
I think it's to do exactly this, appreciate the opportunities we have to give a deeper understanding of what Caye Caulker is, and also of what the tourism industry is. I think sometimes the industry itself is not understood, that we end up squandering, or we end up over commercializing what is your competitive edge. And for example, well, Caye Caulker, as has been mentioned, is a preferred destination. It's sought after right now for things that you know, if we keep up the very rapid pace of development, without the smart infusion into that development, then we'll end up losing exactly that, the change of pace that people like, the relaxed atmosphere, the fact that you're in an embracing community, you know, that people are genuine. So when you ask what was our customer service and marketing, that is exactly it, that people like that Caye Caulker is real. Once upon a time, the tourism industry was separated as a front of house and back of house operations, so the tourists never saw back of house. In the case of Caye Caulker, there has never been back of house. When you get on Caye Caulker, you have access to everywhere.
What you see is what you get.
So you've always been part of the production of this product from all angles. And people will tell you that, and especially with the technology today, all of that is, as you say, pumped up right away, instantaneously. And the people of Caye Caulker in the crisis did exactly what they needed to do. Keep soldiering on. You know, you have people in front of you, do your best, put your best foot forward, put your best face forward, and serve your clients in whatever adversity.
We three right here, we are locals from Caye Caulker. It's just generation after generation that keeps on handling all these issues that come on Caye Caulker, right? So we had dealt with it before, less, but this one has been the most, one that had the most impact on the island, and we've seen that we need to do something about it. We have not fully been dependent on the utilities before, so we need to be dependent ourselves. As stakeholders, we need to do our best to provide the service and do our best to give to the tourism industry.
And I think another thing to consider too, knowing that as I said about the development of the island, we need to also maybe seek some sort of demands from the Central Building Authority. It's not much of the local responsibility. If you have a duty, that's your job to make certain things are done or not done, you know, in the sense that approval for certain heights in building, and also there's a certain measurement on each property where you should build. I think all the huge hotels going up, I am not against what is happening, the development, but having it being maybe over what is supposed to be in their legal aspect is that you should keep it within that means. Nobody should be able to walk over the council or any association or even go around and do anything to get an approval to proceed with a building or construction. That in itself, it takes a lot of energy and also supply of water. So for the most part, if there was a guest on a third or fourth floor room, having a shower, the rooms are not built that you could have proper air access because of air condition. You could just imagine some of the turmoil and the disaster in that
inconvenience
room, right?
So I'd imagine, you know, sometimes in crisis what it does is kind of refocus issues. So what is the position now of the BTIA? In fact, I know that you've taken this opportunity when you were without electricity and water to focus on looming challenges like sewage and being able to put that information out as well. What other issues are you talking about to be preventative?
I want to talk about the sewer a little bit in that it's the it didn't just come up now.
Yeah.
Actually, last year we ran a full community petition, which we have forwarded through the BTIA to the relevant authorities. We have been discussing with them. As I said, from 2011, we put in the sewer because usually sewer is paid off by water usage, right?
Yeah.
Like fresh water. So we already pay the highest rates of water on Caye Caulker, and although like your Belize City rates include your sewer, some Pedro rates include sewer, we are already paying more only for water. So that's already a cost problem. But the alternative is worse right now. So we need a lot of attention to that now. The other problems are, of course, the destruction of habitat that we know. Mangrove and the coral reef and the turtle grass are prime for food to begin with, to feed our own selves and then our visitors. And so food security, we're looking at climate change. And I must congratulate the community of Caye Caulker because we've been going through also months of preparation for resiliency, for disaster response. So like in the recent disasters from September to now, the community has been quite well trained and responsive and engaged.
Yeah.
And that includes the BTIA as well as our health platform, as well as our disaster response team and several others. And then we are looking also as the BTIA with the fire service. March, the month of March is simulation month. And so we want to have like a community-wide fire simulation. Exercise. So we've been talking with that. We had training already with the fire service and the community for fire prevention. And then we also did a drill exercise at one of the properties to actually
one of the things that stood out to me.
So we have a number of things that are on the table.
One of the things that stood out to me in light of all that has happened is the fact that while yes, Caye Caulker is a rapidly growing island and it's prime for tourism, in terms of proper health care on the island, that remains a huge concern. When I listen to one recent investor, stakeholder come forward and say, you know what, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have water. My boyfriend has a particular medical condition and he could have lost his life because we didn't have proper access to healthcare during that time. That raises serious alarms because that is one isolated case, but it could be for everybody else.
Could be for more.
Yeah.
There was definitely a communication problem with some agencies. That was one of the things. We're lucky we had a runner. Now we're not lucky. We know that where everything else fails, we have to fill in otherwise and effectively. So we had our means of getting information out. And probably it's because we grew up with actually somebody in the village walking around with a sandwich board when we needed announcements. We actually had somebody with a big board front and back. And that was our iPhone. But so we have these memories of being able to do otherwise, not only press a button. But that was one. The health center, there is a health center, there is a doctor and nurse posted there, and they also have volunteers that help at the health center. We also have a community health person, and they are available all the time. And the health center did have a backup generator operating during the crisis. That was donated by the Red Cross and USAID recently, right? In the training that we did, then the committee was gifted a whole set of emergency tools, equipment, phones, and things like that. We've also, as villagers, mapped out different areas and resources and things like that, so we know where things are for in any disaster, that we don't have to always start to be looking for things. But and so we're this week having a meeting again with the Ministry of Health. There's also a designated area for a new polyclinic, and if that goes on schedule. We always hear that these things should happen like by 2018 and 2011 and 20 this and 20 that. You hear a few times that they even secure the money and then something else happens and it doesn't happen. So we can only keep asking for more accountability and more involvement of the community. There has to be oversight at every level, because sometimes we can't just leave everything in the hands of the village council too, because there are federal laws and there are local levels of activities, and we have to obey the law. And sometimes there are petty quarrels amongst the village councils too. You know, like for example, myself, any plan I put for development, I must leave by the local council 10 feet of parking space everywhere else, but very few people otherwise are asked to do that. I say, why only me? Everybody is building to the edge of their property, why only me? And then, so there has to be oversight for when injustices are done too. We are supposed to all building requests or development, we are supposed to inform the village council and ask for a letter of recommendation. But if you put in your plan like 9 months and nothing, you don't hear an answer, you will go otherwise, right? And then like in my case, like 9 months later, I got a letter saying no to everything. But I had already gone the other direction and my building was already in process, right? So but if they take that long and then you're blocking the whole community from an economic infusion or investment or progress, then there has to be some level where these problems can be aired and ironed out, and where things can be objective. So as I said, it's a checks and balances. Yes, proper checks. It's a wake-up call all around, and if it took this to get our voices heard and to get us on a more united front with our service providers, our utilities, our different industries, because that's another nice thing about Caye Caulker, that as much as it is tourism, we are still a community, you know, and a national, local community.
And I hear what you're saying in terms of a wake-up call. How are you using the opportunity with the conversation already started on looking at future developments? We saw the area representative and Minister of Tourism having a presence while this crisis was taking place. We saw collaboration with the village council. We saw BTB going out as well. How do you use this opportunity to ensure that all the other issues get put on the agenda as well? Do you continue engagement with these bodies?
Yes, we do. We have set actually, the National BTIA on our behalf is arranging a meeting with the minister, and we are continuing our efforts with the BTIA in the greening efforts that they want to pursue nationally, as not only the image but also the substance of a lot of what we do, especially like with the birding festival that they are promoting also, and trying to get more people involved in that. On the ground, we are also with the ministry, with the solar and renewable energies for today and tomorrow. People, please sign up and please go get your individual assessments and see if you can afford to help yourselves. With water, we will continue with the community and to see where we're going with securing.
And we can't lose sight of the fact that you're still waiting for the permanent solutions. You're under the temporary fix for now.
Our job is to develop invest in the industry, develop, employ people, serve the customer. If we have an agency that says their sole job is to provide this, then yes, we would want to have some confidence that if we subscribe and pay, that we will get that.
That's only fair.
None of us said our business was providing energy or providing water, so we can't. We put in the superstructure and the service, and then we expect that the infrastructure is matched along the way. But now we see that we have to, as you said, be a lot more cohesive in getting the plans working together.
Well, we want to thank you for coming in and giving us this update as to what's been happening on Caye Caulker. And of course, we will continue to follow with updates as well in our newscast. But thank you for coming in.
Thank you very, very much for having us here.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the upcoming calendar for professional development from the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industries. Please stay tuned.
Are you a public officer who is in need of services from the Employee Assistance Program? Not sure where to go? Don't
back, and we are closing off our show today talking about opportunities for professional development. We have with us on set Yoshua Katus, who's the manager of member relations at the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good morning, Yoshua.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning.
And thank you for being here as well, reminding us once again that there are always opportunities for professional development, right?
Yes, definitely. And as you know, the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we are big time when it comes to business supporting organizations, businesses, right? We're a business association, and we support all aspects of business to help them stay in business, help them grow, be sustainable, and professional development is a big part of that. I know every year we have a training calendar. Year after year, we improve on it based on the feedback from our members, what they actually want, and we provide that first entry level trainings, middle management, and higher end. But I do note that sometimes there are some businesses that they've never sent their staff to any trainings, and I don't think that they realize that that affects them because it keeps their business at one point, and they have the potential to grow.
There's this really great cartoon between, I think, a CFO and a CEO that says, the CFO is saying, we're going to spend so much on, it's going to cost us so much to pay to train this person. And then the CEO says, it will cost us so much if they remain untrained. And it's always one of those things that I think that we need to put into perspective. It's a productive employee, a well-trained employee can deliver better services and better business for you. And so I find it interesting, your lineup, because it means that a lot of it is actually member-driven. What are you finding to be the areas that people feel that they need the most enhancements?
It would be two things. As our training calendar have about 17 different topics, but it's not limited to that. Within the year, we do partnerships and we add in more. But one would be working with employees, managing them. It's a very difficult task. Even though there are people who have been managers for many years, have so many experience across the board in different business areas or departments. They maybe have their degrees, but it's never enough because the people you're hiring, they're different. Millennial, they're coming from a different background. And a second one would be customer care. That's one of our top trainings, customer care. And that's the first one that we're starting with this year.
And how in depth are these trainings? Are they kind of just like refreshers? Are they tips on emerging trends? How do you guide what will work best for all members?
Well, we design, as I said, we have first entry, we have middle and higher end. We have partnerships with two different organizations, the Belize Training and Employment Center, that's under Beltrade, BTEC, and they cater to a lot of first entry, and some of it is refreshers. You know, the customer doing is advanced customer care, so you have some kind of knowledge. And the reason we used to offer just the customer care, but our members asked for the advanced. So in that session, there will be case studies and real life situations, because customer care, is so very important.
You're the front line, basically, in terms of being able to address certain issues that customers have.
And I've sit in that, we offer a service at the chamber, but I've sit in that position as a customer many times, and I'm sure we all do. And sometimes you sit there and sometimes the enterprise gives you like, they're doing a favor, but we both need each other.
No, I have had instances where I say to myself, and it could be reputable companies, and they don't realize that it's just not good customer service. I mean, clearly the person is doing the best that they can or what they think is their best, but it's just as a customer, you are left wanting for more. And it has a big impact on whether or not I'm going to go back or try somewhere new.
And send other clients to them.
Absolutely.
And there's some, you never know which customer might take it to the far extent that they go on media and TV, and it just destroy your reputation.
We have seen all those business reviews on Facebook, and that's just because of one disgruntled customers. But what you find is that the people chiming in often have had very similar experiences as well. So advanced customer care goes beyond just talking about what is good practice. It's about how do you resolve challenging situations, I'd imagine.
Yes, and it goes back to why are you in business? What's your mission, your vision? Why are you there? Who you're supposed to serve? So you go back to your purpose.
Yeah.
And if you know why you're hired and why you're in business, then you'll be able to deliver better.
Yeah.
And so customer care is usually we'll say the first entry because but then we have a partnership with the University of West Indies, and it's going for like almost 10 years with them. And they offer the more higher end. You want to sharpen knowledge that you already gotten before, and you get a certificate from UWI, and it's recognized throughout the region, Caribbean region.
Which means you can put it on your resume as well, right?
Yeah.
So customer care, you said, is one of the sought after trainings most requested, and you also said managing people. And I like what you said, because oftentimes people become managers because they're great at what they do. Maybe they've worked in all areas of that department. But managing people is different from knowing how their jobs are supposed to be done, right?
Yes. So that's a difficult. I'm a manager myself, and I've found difficulties. And I speak with my superior, of different ways that we could do things better. Yeah. Because you have a goal, and sometimes it might just be communication, sharing it with your team, because as a manager, you're not one man. So maybe you know how to get the job done, but getting your team on board so that everyone has the same vision.
Yeah. That's always a challenge, though.
Yeah.
Well, it starts with communication. That's the first thing,
Everyone has different means of how you get the information in. A verbal might just come through here and goes through the next side.
That's what makes it challenging, particularly when you're dealing with a group of people with different points of view or perspectives on how to get it done.
So as I said, there are different management trainings. Maybe you have to start with a strategy. So that would be your next training after customer care, strategy, planning. And we also have with time management, professional etiquette. It's good that managers see the importance in sending their employees to these trainings, because they might not be the best one to communicate and train their employees. So we're getting professionals who are able to maybe get the information, hopefully get information through.
Yeah. So professional etiquette, strategic planning, tell us about some of the other things that we can see on the calendar this year and perhaps take advantage of.
Okay, so we have time management, as I mentioned. I have a list here. So let me just run through it. Records management. We have, it's not only theory, but you also get an opportunity to visit the archives in Belmopan and see how they actually record and file their information. Roles and responsibilities of a new supervisor. So if you're new in the role, this will guide you as to how to better manage. Effective communication, online marketing. We're doing a switch now from more people going online, so you want to capture that audience. And we also have emotional intelligence, when understanding how your workers
is that new?
It's new on our calendar.
New for your calendar,
It's a topic that's been around, but it's new.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not only your customers, but their employees thinking like them.
Yeah. And in fact, that's actually one of the areas, I think, with schools and even in new in employment outside of Belize, that they really pay attention to, just because it has a lot to do with how you'll be able to work
and connect with them.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have disciplinary action, the importance of documentation. This is a very popular one because your employees sometimes don't follow the course as they're required, and how you deal with that. So there is a process, and it also has to do with the labor laws. So it's a legal process. Stress management, team building, and I like this one, the voice of leadership, how leaders inspire, influence, and achieve results. Because as a leader, sometimes you have to set the example, and that follows with the inspiration and getting your employees to actually follow through what you want them.
Employees have to buy into the vision, I think, and if you can do so effectively in how you communicate it, that's going to help a lot. So what are the, I mean, are these free? Are they free for members? What's the range of costs that we're looking at?
So we have, if we're doing a BTEC training, it's $168.75, $168, something like $170 now, adding in GST.
Okay.
Everything that service we offer, GST included.
Yeah.
So if it's a UWI course, it's like $337.50, and it's, as I said, it's a special arrangement we have with UII. It's a course that they've crashed down and they've offered it, especially for our members. So if you would go directly to them, it would have taken a little bit longer and a bit more.
Yeah.
And then you get a UWI certificate for the course.
And since we're a membership organization, we have different levels of membership, different tiers, and with different tiers come different benefits. So if you had signed on to the Distinguished and President Circle tier, you can be allotted some free trainings within the year, a maximum of 6 within. So we design our membership tiers based on the different needs of businesses. There are some businesses that are big time in trainings, so they sign up for that category because they will be sending a lot of their employees. And if they're not able to get into the free trainings, they can get up to 25% discount off the trainings.
Nice. All right, and how do people get in touch or get access to the calendar?
So you can check out our Instagram page or website at www.belize.org, our Facebook page, or you can call us 223-5330, or our work cell number 614-3138, or email us bcci@belize.org. And if you're not a member of the chamber, this is an opportunity for you to join. Training is just one of the aspects that we offer. There's so many other things. I've been on the show talking about lobby and advocacy, on expos, business connection. So there are a lot more stuff that the chamber does for businesses to help your business grow.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and telling us all about these opportunities, and hopefully people take advantage of them as well.
Thank you for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take that final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up, so stay tuned.
Company.
we're back. We want to say thank you for tuning in. Of course, the show ran a bit over schedule. Isani, thank you for providing the update, the latest breaking news on what took place at the end of Friday and over the weekend. We do want to remind you, of course, that in order to get the full story, we shared one this morning, but there's even more that you'll be able to see in our newscast tonight. That's all the time we have. Remember, if you want to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. Drop me a line at marleni_oye@channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
Start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.